All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you to episode 3 of the Fast, Easy Success Marketing Insider podcast.
The Fast, Easy Success Marketing Insider, the uncut, uncensored podcast, bringing you the refreshing, no fluff, no BS views in business, sales, and marketing you desire. Your host, author, marketing strategist, direct response copywriter, and serial entrepreneur, Eric Barton, the results specialist. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in today, and a lot of things coming exciting for you in the future as well. So make sure you hit that subscription button right now so you don't miss the Value Pack podcast coming your way as well. And before we dive into our show and our very special guest, I just want to welcome everyone to head over to FastEasySuccess.com. Go ahead and grab your business building tips sent directly to your email daily. And when you head over to FastEasySuccess.com, I'm also giving you your free business cheat sheets waiting for you. They'll help you with your websites, emails, and writing. So I'm excited to get in. I have a very special guest today. He's actually, I've known about him just a little while now, but in the short time that I've got to know him as far as through his emails and the things he's doing, I've really enjoyed the things he has going on, and I felt, bringing him on the show and would bring a lot of great value to the listeners and definitely you out there. So if you haven't discovered this man yet, you're definitely in for a treat today. He's a marketing consultant, a copywriter, and an email specialist who focuses on creating email autoresponder sequences that get read and, most importantly, get acted upon. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome to the show John Mcintyre, the autoresponder guy. John, thanks so much for taking the time to jam with us today.
Dude, what a fantastic intro. Thanks for having me on the show, man. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I know, we're on a big time difference. I'm usually used to talking to people a couple-hour difference maybe, but you're out there in Thailand, and we got a 12-hour difference on us. So, again, thanks for taking the time here. And, definitely I know everybody that's listening here, a lot of people in business basically may not be familiar with you. Some are, but if you don't mind, can you tell people really how you got the bug or started out in the sales, marketing, and copywriting world here?
Sure, man. It was 18 months ago. I wasn't in Thailand then. I was in the Philippines. And
okay.
I've been in the Philippines to work for a resort where I was doing the internet marketing. I had their website. I was doing their blog and that kind of stuff. And I was trying a few different business ideas, trying to set up my own thing on the side, and nothing really worked until I created my own product and tried to sell it to a list that I had, and it kind of worked. But then I changed the title of the product from basically it was a recipes book, and instead of calling it a recipes book, I called it the benefit of the book, which was lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks. Okay. And just a simple change like that, changed sales overnight. It was very, very interesting. And after that, I think it was the next day or the next few days, it just slowly dawned on me that I need to learn how to do more of this stuff. I need to learn how to communicate and sell with the words. So yeah, I basically went and did what Gary Halbert suggests in his Gary Halbert letter, where he says, go and write out sales letters by hand. So I went and did that, and did that for a long time. I can't remember how long, but I did at least 100 of them, and then read some of the books that he suggested, and started working with clients. And since then, it's just been like gradually picking up steam. Like one of the first things I did for a client was a buddy of mine. He wanted an autoresponder done, and after we did the autoresponder, the results were great. So we went and did a podcast for him called how we increased our opt-in rate by 257%.
Nice.
So that went over really well with his audience, and then people started coming to me as for email autoresponders and email marketing stuff. And it took me a little while, but eventually I caught on to the idea that my USP was that I was this email marketing guy, this autoresponder guy. So I changed my marketing so I made sure that everyone called me that. And now I just mostly do email stuff.
Nice. Yeah, that's what one reason definitely, I thought it'd bring some value because I know, like you said, that's your main focus. And, a lot of people, even, going into direct response writing, I was thinking, and really even besides emails, they can apply to like sales letters, websites. But anybody out there, when I start like copy, for example, if I'm doing a project for myself or clients, the unsexy part of it, but the most important part really I feel is the research. Not only the product and the service, which obviously is important, but, I go deep into the market, and, the niche or the field I'm working in. how do you usually start your projects when you're going to write, even if it's not emails, just sales letters, anything you're doing? Is there a certain, MO or method of operation you have when you start your sales letters?
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Eric. It's everyone thinks that copywriting and marketing and advertising, well, a lot of people think it's about being catchy and clever and making things sound good and flash and being real sexy with it. And I think everyone thinks that when they first get into it. But what I've realized is that it's more about the research, having that empathy. I mean, Jay Abraham talks about this when he, with the strategy of preeminence. It's doing things where you understand your prospect, the marketplace, better than they understand themselves. Because when you sit down and write copy, it's not, people aren't attracted to flashy headlines and really cleverly written sales copy. They're attracted to people who understand them. And so the best headline isn't the catchiest, so you're not going to be able to guess what the best headline is. The best headline is going to be something like the thought, one of the main thoughts inside the prospect's head when he lands on that page. When he wakes up in the morning, what's he thinking about? When he goes to bed, what keeps him up at night? What's he stressing out about? And that's the thought, that's the headline. That's what makes it.
That's awesome that you said that. That's so important. There's so many people I see. I mean, especially in like ClickBank and everything, not to down it or anything, but there's a lot of hype out there. And a lot of people think that's really the way that they're going to, get responses offline as well. And like you said, you hit it right exactly. If you know the market and you know what you're doing, then, it's going to really write itself, once you have that research and know the market. What's one way you maybe go about, finding out about your market? Is there a certain way you go about finding out about the market you're working in, or?
I think one of the best ways is to actually just talk to the market. So let's say I'm trying to create a product. When I created a product earlier this year on email marketing, I just asked people on my list if they'd jump on Skype with me for 20 minutes so we could talk about email marketing and so I could find out what their problems were. And it's pretty much that. That's the best way. One of the best ways is you're really just trying to understand people. And the best way to do that is to spend time with them. And the best way to spend time with them is, in person if you can, or if not in person, then on the phone. And, it's a little bit nerve-wracking for some people to do that, but it's so valuable. And part of this is just, this will come with the experience. I've found that I'm doing an email marketing mastermind right now, and I'm finding that I'm learning so much about what my prospect, what my audience really needs to learn about email marketing just by working with them. So there are so many ways to do it. You just want to, talk to them. If you would just want to do research online, you can go and hang out where they hang out, which might be Amazon reviews or forums. Find go and look at the Amazon bestseller lists and see what books they're buying, and then read the reviews of those books. Forums are great.
Yeah, that's a great.
You can do surveys to your list, set up surveys with Google Forms or SurveyMonkey, and offer people, say, some sort of report or ebook in exchange for filling out the survey. And you really just want to find out. A lot of it's the emotional stuff. Obviously, there's the facts of they're overweight, they're depressed, whatever. But the important stuff is how do they feel about that? How do they feel? Like, what thoughts are they thinking to themselves when they look in the mirror in the morning? That's the important stuff, is what gets them pissed off. What do they get angry about? What are they sad and depressed about? What are they excited about? What gets them really pumped up? And when you understand these things, the copy does. It mostly writes itself. Once you have assuming you've got a basic understanding of how a sales letter should look or how an email should write,
right? Everything
just writes itself. So,
yeah, that's a great point. There's 2 lines even I use on a direct mail letter, and I have on my website. And it's funny, every time I talk to clients, they say, I'm so glad you understand me. But it's funny, the 2 lines I'm using is what clients always tell me that their experience before they come to me. So by using that, exactly like you said, what they went through, the pains, their desires, just by putting, a few lines of them saying it, basically, it kind of builds that not only empathy with them, but it also builds that rapport. So, yeah, that's a fantastic point. I know I listened to, actually, I think it was the other day, you had a podcast you sent out, because you have a show as well, and you had a gentleman on, I think it was Dan Page, and you guys were talking about headlines. And, obviously the headlines can apply to subject lines for emails. Can you remember any of the method or tips that maybe you use or you guys talked about as far as, creating those winning headlines? I know you talked about just one thing a little while ago as far as, putting that, what the prospect really wants or desires in the headline. But
this is a great question. It's kind of like, I mean, this is you can use this for headlines, for bullets, for email. You can use this for anything. And the key, the title of that podcast was, I think it was How to Write Head-Snapping Headlines. Let's see. Yeah, How to Write Head-Snapping Headlines.
Right, yeah, that was it.
Finding the golden nugget within a story. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
You got to find, like, let's say, so I was just on a mastermind call before this, and one of the guys on the call, a client of mine, he told me he'd just written an email, and I was giving him some feedback on it. It was about what gambling has to do with marketing. I can't remember the exact subject line.
Okay.
But then we talked about how he asked me, in one part he kind of says, gamblers are breaking the rules. They're doing the wrong thing and they're getting kicked out of casinos because of this. I was like, that's a great headline. That's a great subject line. That's a great headline as well. Imagine a sales letter that said, discover the secret that's getting, discover the gambling discover the secret that's getting gamblers kicked out of casinos, and how you can apply it to your business to crush your competitors and saw your way to profit, something like that. And the hook there is this idea of gamblers. It's like, I wonder what gamblers are doing to game this system. Like how gamblers are gaming the system, and it's getting kicked out of casinos, and how you can do it in your own business. Like this is what's happening with that story is that it's kind of like there's an emotional hook. Instead of just saying how to clean up. How to use systems in your business to increase profitability. You add something like how to use a secret gambling strategy in your own business so you can game the whole system. Like it just sounds better. When you add that gambling in there, that gambler, it just makes the whole benefit so much more interesting. It's kind of like a buddy of mine, Ben Sell, who also does email stuff. He's really good at this thing where you would go. You might talk about, a secret tip. The classic line in a bullet point is usually, you'll discover, and then one of the bullet points would be something like, a little known tip for, losing weight fast or something. Well, that's so bland, right? So if you wanted to make that, that could be a headline, that could be a bullet. It's just so bland and boring. So like, a way to change that would be like, you could say, an ancient tip from, I'm thinking about it, what's a Japanese name?
Monks or something.
Well, you could say an ancient, what's this? The ancient creed of an old Japanese warrior clan. So you'll discover an ancient creed of of a Japanese warrior clan that they use to stay lean all year round and finding fit.
Right. Yeah. People want to know, something that other people know, or it's the mystery to it and the curiosity factor all kind of rolled into one. And like
so much more interesting.
Yeah, it does, and that's the key. I think that's where a lot of people kind of make it boring and they drop it. But like you said, I'll say, you're speaking of Ben Settle. I had him on actually the first show, and as well. And I know he's been on your show, and you know him. And you guys basically have two different styles. He's more, I guess if I would sum it up, more about the broadcasting out or basically writing it up and sending it out that morning. And you do that sometimes, but your main thing is setting up the autoresponder sequences. And they run automatically, and each one is designed to do one thing. And I was kind of thinking about this because I kind of do a mix of, for the last few years, where I have the welcome email automatic, the next day email is automatic, and then from there, it's basically every Wednesday is in the autoresponder, but Monday to Friday I send out a broadcast anyways. And, that's kind of how I've been doing it. But, when you write those up, basically are you sending them up basically months ahead? Are you setting these up, or do you usually have a certain sequence? Or?
I'm doing these, more or less. Like I've got a 10-week autoresponder right now set up for Drop Dead Copy, which is a site that I have. And, to me, it makes, you could have, like Ben Settle could put all these emails into an autoresponder, but he doesn't.
Right.
I'm not fully sure why. I mean, I figure that, if you're going to write the email, why not just put it into the autoresponder? I don't think there's a big difference between, sending a broadcast or sending an autoresponder. And I do have people on my list who seem to think that I'm sending them broadcasts every morning rather than autoresponder emails. So it's, it's like a backhand thing, but to be honest, I would rather have those emails in the autoresponder working for me forever.
Right. That makes sense. I mean, I had it before, like I said, where I would kind of have it set up, but then I kind of spaced it out. And the reason I don't know if Ben could agree with this, I should ask him about this, but the way I do it is because sometimes I'll change it up as far as offers or things like that, and that's kind of why I do that. And at the same time, I could go back in, like you're saying, too, as well, and change that, obviously, in the autoresponders, too. One thing, too, with your autoresponders, you had a really good webinar about the setting up autoresponders. And you talked about like a method. I kind of do it with big ideas or results, but you talked about a method where you basically can number 1 to 10 of the autoresponder sequence. And do you mind sharing that, what you were talking about? Because it's an easy but potent way of doing this, of getting going, basically setting up your emails to go.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so that's I call that the Mcintyre method. System. I mean, it's just called the Mcintyre method, which is a product I sell. Anyway, it's a 4-step system or 4-step process to writing profitable autoresponders. And part of, I think the part you're talking about is that when you outline 10 emails and then you write them.
Right.
The way the outline works is, so step 1, week 1, you got to do your research. You've got to do what we're talking about before and really drill down into you really want to know what the problems are in the marketplace. So when someone's I'll take my business as an example. It's okay. So I do email marketing stuff, and some of the problems are that people think open rates are important. People don't understand the value of research. People think it's hard to write emails fast. So there's all these different problems like that, right?
Right.
Then what you do with this outline is email number 1 of the autoresponder. It's always a welcome email. So it welcomes them to the family. I always ask them a question or two. So something like, before we get into it, I want to ask you a quick question, and I promise you I reply to every email. And the question is usually something, it's just more data gathering. So it can be something like, what's your ideal transformation in regard to email marketing? Like, what goal are you trying to achieve? Right. And then question number 2 will be something like, what's your biggest fear in relation to that? So what those 2 questions do is find out, who are they? What do they care about? What's important to them? What's their goal in life? And then also, what do they feel is stopping them from that, which is very valuable information.
That is, extremely.
So that's email 1. So you welcome them, ask them a couple of questions, then tell them about what's coming up. And so as for what's coming up, you can do this for the 10, you can make this autoresponder as long as you want, but let's start with 10 emails. So you've got email 1 is welcome, email 2 to 10 is the rest of the autoresponder. And the easiest way to think about this is to let's say you've got 10 you've only got 9 emails to write now. So let's say we've got 9 problems in the marketplace. So, in my case, it's things like people think open rates matter. They don't do their research. They think a website's a business. They don't send emails enough. There's all sorts of things.
Right.
So, and what I do is I take each one of those problems and put them next to an email. And then I have an outline. And email 1 is the welcome email. Email 2 is problem number 1. Email 3 is problem number 2. Email 4 is a problem. Email 5 is a problem. Email 6. So every email just deals with a problem. And the idea is that I tell a story. I usually tell a story or say something interesting. And then I basically get their attention and kind of talk about the problem and hint or tease them about a solution. And maybe give them some valuable information. I like say with research, like when one problem is that a lot of people don't understand the value of research. So there's an email where it's just about the benefits of empathy. And it teaches them something. They get something out of it. They discover that they reinforce, or I reinforce to them, that empathy is extremely important. But if they want a list of questions they need to ask people when they get on the phone or when they do a survey, they need to get the Mcintyre method. And what the Mcintyre method is a system of where they can plug these ideas into, where I'm going to give them all the tools, all the questions they need to ask, so they can do this research properly. So the reason that works is because what I'm doing is I'm getting their attention. I'm telling them what is important, which is empathy. I'm telling them why it's important. Here are the benefits. But if they want to know how to really do it, how the nitty-gritty to-do action items for how to actually do it, they need to buy the product. So that's what you do with every one of these problems. You talk about you talk about what they have to do to overcome it. You talk about why it's important for them to do that, and it's obvious why, because that's what they're going to do to overcome it. But if they want to know exactly how, they have to buy the product.
Right. And I think, the way you set it up too, like the 1 to 10 with the welcome email, I think it's easy. That pretty much sets it up for anybody, no matter how talented they are, how much skills they have. I mean, anybody can, do the research and think about the problems, number it, like you said, 1 to 10, and really start a sequence and get going. That
was the point of the product. Was the idea was, or the framework is that I've seen other people buy a lot of email marketing products, and they just a lot of people, the biggest barriers, they just never get around to doing something. In the case of autoresponders, they just never get around to writing something. So the idea was, I wanted to create something that made it really, really easy for people to just get down to business.
Right, and that does it. I mean, that's easy. Like you said, a lot of those courses out there, they're fluffed up, or they'll tell you some, but they don't really tell you how to really get going. And the way you set it up, basically 1 to 10, it gets, you can just get up and going. That's cool. Dude, what about people that, like, if they have, basically, let's say I'm a brand new business owner, and, the other, I guess I would say, unsexy secret of the business world is the lead generation part, because, like, a lot of people, when they say they want leads, what they really want is customers. They don't want leads. Leads, you can grab the low-hanging fruit, some people are going to buy right away, but some people you're going to have to nurture and be on. I've had people on my list, sometimes right away, and they'll call me to invest, and sometimes I've had people all the way over a year on my list, and they're like, Eric, I'm ready to do business. So, I mean, it's about building trust, obviously, and nurturing that list. But what do you feel about, as far as lead generation? How is your feelings on that as far as what you feel is important and how you go about doing that?
It goes back to, you've got to do your research first, like we talked about before. Until you understand the prospect or the person you're trying to reach, there's no point doing any lead generation because you'll end up picking up people that you don't really, really want.
Right.
So assuming someone's done their research, then the goal is really just to get the right kind of leads onto their list. So they want to know, who are these people, where do they hang out, how much money do they make, what's important to them, all these different things, which is going to allow you to make a good, compelling offer on the landing page, and then that's going to get their relevant people on there who actually need what you offer.
Right.
And then, you get them on there.
Yeah, definitely quality over quantity. So, and that's what a lot of people, every year I do this, I'll scrub my list, and my friend that does, some marketing and stuff, he always doesn't understand why I do that. But, I'm more about the quality of the list. Obviously you don't want people on your list. For one, if you have inactive subscribers, it can cost you more money, obviously. Sitting, those companies will charge you the more subscribers you have. So if people aren't opening or inactive subscribers, there's no reason to keep them on. But I think you hit it, right too, about the research. That'll obviously make it a lot easier, like you said, and plus you're attracting who you want. Is there a master, like, basically lead generation technique or basically bait piece that you've used that you found to work well, whether it's a report, book, et cetera?
No, I don't think there's any magic bullet here. Everyone's usually doing the free reports. I don't usually do them just because I think everyone's doing it.
Right.
Especially in my market, to be honest, I just think it's really overdone and it's lame. Like, it's just so overdone, and I think a lot of people don't want to sit around reading a PDF on their computer.
Right.
One idea is this isn't relevant to everyone, but I was at a conference in Sydney in June this year, and Clay Collins was there, and he's the CEO, one of the founders of Lead Pages, which is a landing page software. And he basically said that here's our best converting opt-in template, which was basically a picture of a woman looking to the, I guess, top right-hand corner of the screen, and in her line of sight was the opt-in form. And the opt-in form, the best opt-in bribe that Clay and his team had found was like a 5 tools to, what was their offer? I think it was like a one-page PDF with the 5 best tools for recording marketing videos or something like that.
Right.
And that got the most opt-ins.
Nice.
So
yeah,
I don't think that's the perfect way to do this.
Right, I agree. I was hoping you'd say that. I didn't know if you'd say it, but yeah, it is all about testing, and it can depend, market to market. Like you said, the reports are definitely outdone. I do, just kind of a tip for the listeners too. One thing I do though, as far as a report, when I have people opt in, I do offer, if they reply back to the email with their offline mailing address, I offer to send that, that report related to the niche I'm working in. And what that does a lot of times will attract those quality people or more interested people, plus you're bringing them offline to get, better conversions that way as well. So it's kind of like combining the two forces of online and offline, and it's as simple as I'm hitting reply to the email, versus making it difficult or hoops to jump through to get that. So it's just kind of one way to kind of sometimes kind of screen some of the non-qualified prospects as well. But, yeah, and, in the beginning I know we were talking about research, and we've talked about research, which is important. And, for emails, I've talked about this too before, and some tips. Basically you can recycle articles you wrote, you can send links to helpful videos, etc. But like you said a little earlier too, and you do a lot, and I noticed that in your emails, which are powerful, and I do as well, which are stories. And, the emails, if you set it up right, they're not only, like you said, give value, and they get something from it, but it obviously wants them to buy as well, which, we're all in business, obviously, to make money too. And can you maybe share a method or two of how you come up with your stories or tie those back into your product or services?
Sure. So the stories thing is something that you have to practice. So like, if the listener is listening to this and they've never done this before, they've never written stories via email, and they want to start, the first few ones, for a little while, they're going to be kind of crap. They're not going to be very good at it. But what they need to do, it's an absolutely amount of time you put into it. So if you write an email a day for the next 90 days, which isn't that hard, just Monday to Friday, you'll get so much. It'll start off, and it might take an hour and a half, 2 hours. But by the end of it, you'll be writing emails in 10, 15 minutes flat. It gets so much easier. So as for stories, so there's two ways that I do it. There's A to B.
Okay.
There's the A to B way of writing a story, and there's the B to A. And what does that mean? So here's what. An A to B story is where you just, you open the email and you start writing a story. And then after 200 or 300 words, you find a way to seg or transition into some sort of pitch.
Okay.
So an example of that is, let's say, so I told a story to my list. It's a very popular email that I get a lot of replies to this email. And the email is this. So the subject line says, Abraham Lincoln's Guide to Email Marketing. And it says, hey, Eric, here is Abraham Lincoln's Guide to Email Marketing. In 1809, Abraham Lincoln's born, February 12. 1816, Abraham Lincoln's family is forced out of their home. He needs to work to support his family. A couple of years later, his sister dies. Then a business venture fails. Runs for a politician. He loses. Same year, he loses his job. Then he decides to get a law school, but he can't get in. He borrows money from a friend. He's bankrupt by the end of the year. Runs for state legislature. This time he wins, which is okay. But then the year he was looking better as he was engaged to be married. Unfortunately, his fiancée died, and he was grief-stricken. The next year, he had a total nervous breakdown, and for 6 months had to stay in bed. He tried to become Speaker of the state legislature. He was defeated. He sought to become elector. He was defeated. He married Mary Todd, and they had 4 boys, but only one would live to maturity. He ran for Congress. He loses. He ran for Congress again, and he wins. Moves to Washington. Then he ran for re-election, and he loses. He sought for the job of land officer in his home state, didn't get the job. Then his son, Edward, dies. Then he runs for Senate of the United States. He loses. Then he sought the vice presidential nomination at a national convention. He gets less than 100 votes. Then he runs for the Senate again, and he loses again. 2 years later, Abraham Lincoln is elected president of the United States. And then, so that's the story. All right, that's the A. So we're talking about A to B. That's the story. And then here's the B part. Persistence, determination, a willingness to face defeat after defeat after defeat, if it meant one day he could achieve his goal. Are you struggling to make email marketing work? Are you facing problems with open rates and click-throughs? Maybe you're losing money. Maybe you don't know how to make sales. Or maybe you just think it's all a waste of time. So what's Lincoln's Guide to Email Marketing? Don't give up. Push on, good sir or good ma'am. The best is yet to come. Get yourself a good email marketing map, like the Mcintyre method, and move towards success. So long as you never give up, you're guaranteed to succeed.
Nice. That's beautiful. I hope that kind of the listeners caught that, how you tied that in. Yeah, that's beautiful. I had one similar where I wrote an email called Disney, Chicken, and Your Success, and I talked about Walt Disney, how he was turned down so many times. Colonel Sanders, obviously, how he received over 1,000 no's and kept going. And, and just kind of tied it back into after talking about they need to be determined, don't give up, and, here's your opportunity, and blah, blah, blah. But that's kind of an easy way to tie it in. And that's what I like about yours. They're not only entertaining, but they also give value and also, ties it back, obviously gets the person interested. So that's awesome. Do you find that you're doing stories more often in your autoresponders, even like, for example, when you're setting up your sequences, do you find that you do majority of stories?
Yeah, I mean, it's all stories in a sense. Like, it's all very, because you got that A to B story, and the other one is the B to A, which is where you start with a concept or an idea that you want to teach someone. It's kind of like you're telling parables. It's like, I don't know if people are familiar with Jesus, but in the Bible, but Jesus told parables, and there would always be to teach a moral. Like, the moral of the story is this,
right?
So and if Jesus came out, and whether you're religious or not, this is important, that if Jesus just came out of the gate and said, this is wrong or this is good, stated facts about what's right and what's wrong, no one would really listen. But when he tells a story about it, everyone understands what he's trying to say, and everyone is able to everyone remembers it, and everyone is able to pass it on. So this is why stories are so beneficial. And you can do what I did then and start with like a story about Abraham Lincoln and then find a way to link it to your product, or you can do it the other way around, which is where you start by saying, well, let me think. So I got an email about open rates, and the idea I want to convince people of, I have an interview with Andre Chaperone from Autoresponder Madness in the product, the Mcintyre method, and so the idea of this email is that I want people to click on my link to go and buy the product because they want to hear more about open rates. So I've started with B, which is the pitch, and then I go back to A, and I work backwards. So it's kind of like, what story, how can I get someone's attention and lead them towards point B? So I kind of work, instead of working forward, start with a story and go to the pitch. I work backwards. I go from what pitch do I want to have, what idea, what's the moral of the story, this email, and then I work backwards to what story will be good for this. And like you just asked a minute ago, a story isn't always a story in like the once upon a time this happened, or a story about Abraham Lincoln. It can be just, think about it like you're just having an interesting conversation at the bar. You're there at the bar with a buddy, and maybe you want to have a rant about something. You want to rant about open rates and why everyone thinks they matter, but they don't matter. It's not really a story, but it's interesting and kind of entertaining.
Right.
So you could, you could say something. So I got a problem. I want to talk to you about something. I got a problem that I want to tell you about. It's about, and then you start saying something. It's not a story, but it's a story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're basically just shooting the shit. You're talking and saying, hey, this is what's going on, and by the way, and,
shooting the shit.
Yeah.
Like that guy who's just always got something interesting to say. You don't have to give away all these how-to tips like some people do. You can just walk in there. And, it's kind of like you're just shooting the shit. You're having a beer with someone, you're chatting, you're having a laugh, telling a funny story that happened the other day. There's a famous, I don't know who said this, but basically nothing bad ever happens to an email marketer. And that anything good or bad or whatever, you can turn it into an email. And the more, like I read an email about how I almost got arrested one day here in Thailand.
Right,
and
right.
People loved it. So you can turn anything that happens to you into an email.
Right. Yeah, that's why, you were saying too with the how-to tips and too. It was funny. I think I was talking to Ben Settle on the show about this too. Was when I first started shooting out emails, I would shoot out like 100% straight value. It wasn't pitches. It was, now and then I would pitch a product, but I'd have 100% value. And the funny thing is, when I was getting unsubscribes, it was never like, oh, your tips suck or, they're no good. They would be like something like, they look valuable, but I just don't have time to put this stuff into action, which I thought was the funniest thing in the world. I'm giving them, this free stuff every day. It was tons of value, but they just didn't take time. And like you said, with stories, and once I started applying stories and making it more about valuetainment or value and the entertainment, my open rates not only went up, the unsubscribe rates dropped, and it's just been a lot more beneficial for not only myself but the listeners, or basically the people receiving the emails, I should say, the audience or the market. And like you said with stories, and they just basically, it gets by also when you're on a selling perspective. Like you said, it kind of shoots by the radar, and people don't really think they're being sold versus a pitch, and they can be entertaining. So. Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, that's cool. Do you find you do that a lot with? Do you do like I don't know if you do like a lot of sales letters too, besides with your own stuff. But if you're working with clients, do you use a lot of stories in the selling too?
I do that well. When I was working with clients, which was 6 months ago, I was using kind of a different strategy. But yeah, still kind of stories and still helpful, but still very much focused on selling. I don't actually do anything with clients at the moment anymore.
Oh, okay.
My own stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I mean, that's been awesome. Yeah, I really want to appreciate, you taking the time today, and definitely coming on the third episode. I really appreciate that. And before everybody goes and takes action on everything you shared today, John, definitely can you tell the listeners any places they can learn more about you or sign up for that email newsletter?
Yeah, the best place to go is dropdeadcopy.com, which is where I basically hang out online. That's where you can join my list, and that's the podcast is there with over almost 30 people now, 30 different email experts, and there's plenty of places to join the list. I'm an email marketer, so I've got opt-ins everywhere. And if you want to get the product, that's mcintyremethod.com, which is MCINTYRE method.com, and that's the 4-week video training program for how to write autoresponders. Nice.
And everybody, I mean, listen, definitely check out his podcast. Go over to dropdeadcopy.com or check it out on iTunes as well. And, yeah, it's definitely worth it, definitely entertaining. So, and definitely that course, I personally, I can't say I've checked out the course yet, but just based on everything I know, obviously you shoot out a lot of value, and I've heard a lot of reviews of it, and obviously it's probably pretty good. So, but definitely check that out over at dropdeadcopy.com. And definitely thanks for sharing all the value. It's been definitely a pleasure today. And I definitely want to thank you again for, taking the time out there in Thailand to come visit us out in the cold weather here in the Midwest. And all the listeners out there, I hope you enjoyed the show, and most importantly, take action on all the tips John Mcintyre shared, the autoresponder guy. And before we go real quick today, if you could just do me 2 quick favors out there, I'd really appreciate it. Just simply hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future business boosting podcasts. And if you stuck around this far with John and I, you obviously enjoyed the show and saw the value. So make sure you leave those 5-star reviews with the comments. We just need your help get it noticed, get all the value out to more people. And I appreciate you tuning into the show today and leaving those reviews. And when you're done, go ahead and grab your business cheat sheets and free daily email tips over at FastEasySuccess.com. I'm your host, Eric Barton, the results specialist, signing out today. And we'll see you next week for another Fast Easy Success Marketing Insider. Here's to your success.